So hello friends. I'm addressing you as friends because you are, already grown up and you are doing your PG. So you are students and you are friends as well. So good morning, all of you. And if you remember, in the last class, I started with democracy, and we try to understand the concept of people and that three questions, and today we will proceed from there. And today I think we'll discuss on democracy in the classical period, democracy in the modern period, democracy sorry uh, classical period, medieval period, and modern period. Then I'll start with uh, you know classical liberal theory of democracy, right? Now, when we talk about classical democracy or democracy in classical period, then it directly means Athenian democracy. It directly means democracy that was there in the Greek time or in the Greece, and the democracy of Greece or democracy of the Athenian democracy, it was kind of a direct democracy. So there is difference between direct democracy, that is that that it is prevailing in the Switzerland, and there is also democracy in the Greek. So Greek form of direct democracy and Switzerland form of direct democracy, you may find the difference, but somehow both can come under uh, you know under direct democracy. Now, in the classical democracy, it was in the form of the direct democracy, not in actually the modern sense. And what were the features of direct democracy, especially that Athenian democracy? Now, there are three features of Athenian democracy, right? I think it will be good for you if I'm saying something, if you will have a paper and pen in your hand and you just write it down, because it will help you. That's a very good practice. Otherwise, I will send you the link. Again, you can listen me. Then why to spend time twice? Why not when you are in the class, you are write down the main points, and it will help you in the future, and it is also a good practice. Right? Somehow in my student career I didn't do that practice, but somehow I managed to be an assistant professor. But this one good practice, you don't know, it will take you what you have not expected. So develop as many as good practice uh, you can, right? So what are these three features of direct democracy? First, citizens is the members of the assembly. That's the first. Citizens is the members of the assembly. Second, possibility or possible in the small state. Possible in the small state. And third, need of politically educated people. Need of politically educated people. Right? Now, you know, as I always tell you in the class that in a class you are also the speaker. You can also be the speaker. So I will initiate, and your job is to jump into that, and you will tell me what all this means. It's very simple actually. You can tell me. I will take the name, and the person, I mean the name what I will take, he or she will tell. So the first point is that citizen is members of the assembly. What does it mean? Avas, you tell me. You can unmute your mic. Only the speaker will unmute.
Sir, member of parliament.
The concept of parliament was not there at the time of Greek. Have you seen any Gram Sabha?
Yes, sir.
Okay, in Gram Sabha, do you call it is a kind of, I mean, it's a kind of parliament, but it is not parliament in the modern sense what we use, right?
Yes.
So in a Gram Sabha, what we do, then we all, gather, we all meet, then there are certain gentlemen, they are called Bhadarluk,
Yes, sir.
and they sit in the center or in the front, and they listen. I mean, they become very impersonal, right? And who are those gentlemen? The gentlemen of that village. Gram means village. Gentlemen of that village, mostly they are the property owning classes, isn't it, Pragya? And they are also the educated classes. So you must have property and you must have education in order to become a Bhadarluk gentleman in the Gram Sabha. And when they, act like the gentleman, Bhadarluk, in the meeting, they become very much impersonal. However, all the villagers of that village, they become the part of that meeting. So that meeting cannot exclude all. So here, you know, uh, who can assemble? Only the citizens can be assembled. But all citizens are not Bhadarluk. All citizens are only the, what I call, people and Bhadarluk. Many people and few Bhadarluks. And this is also applicable here also. So in the Greek city state was a very small state, right? The second point is all about, I mean, this Athenian form of democracy is possible in a small state. And what happens in a meeting or in a Gram Sabha, that happens in the Athenian democracy, right? So all citizens are free to join that meeting. However, they cannot, all cannot be the Bhadarluk. Only the few can be the Bhadarluk. I will come to that. And second point is that it is possible in a small state. I mean, it's not possible in a large state because it has its own problem. I mean, uh, direct democracy is not possible in the large state, primarily because uh, there is no space like that. And even if you are using a mic, then people can listen you to an extent, and after that your mic will not work. Right? So you cannot address people even after using technology or mic, etc. And at the time of Greek, at that time, all these technologies were not there. There is also another reason why Athenian democracy is applicable in the small state. A need of politically educated people. So politically educated people means the leisure person, right? I mean, they have the leisure, they have the property, and since they have the property and they have the leisure, they have the intellectual capability also. Because why I'm telling you why property owning classes are intellectual. Okay, let me throw this question to all of you and let me know it from your conscience, that why property owning classes, a class or property owning class people are intelligent people or are educated people. Why? Educated doesn't mean that you will hold a degree. Educated basically means that you know the difference between right and wrong, and you have potential. Uh, I mean, to stand with truth and behave. You know, behave applying your wisdom, right? I mean, educated people are those people having those people who are having wisdom, right? They are the educated people. Suppose if you are lying, and if you are, there is a difference between what you speak and what you do, then you are not educated, right? You may have, something, you know something, but you are not educated. So there is a difference. Okay, let me throw this question to all of you, that why? property owning classes are also educated classes. Why? Can anyone tell me?
Sir,
Yes, go ahead.
educated peoples means the people which they cast their vote without suppressing by others, were interfering by others. They cast their vote in their own knowledge.
Next, I will.
No, I mean,
Sir,
yes,
let me
Mukesh.
see.
I don't. I'll, when I will answer you, then you will come to know why I told you no. Yes, Mukesh.
Sir, sir, they, mean those who have property, they have no worry to think about their food and about their bread and butter, all that. They have time to learn. They have time to learn the political system. So, I mean, they are
Yes, I mean
educated.
you are partly right, Mukesh. So thank you. You are partly right
They can.
because they
Yes,
don't
sir.
depend upon others. So they are
Yes,
self-sufficient and
yes,
they can, uh, you know, uh, stand with their own wisdom, right? If you depend on somebody, then the other side will have control over you, right? If you don't depend on them, then you can stand with your own legs. You don't need other legs. That is the part. But I was thinking in a different way. No, since you have property, you have to manage your property, right? And you tell me there are two kinds of issues or cases. One is criminal case, another is civil case, right? Now tell me, uh, between these two cases, criminal case and civil case, which is complicated? I mean, tell me, no problem.
Civil.
Yes, who said it? What's your name?
Leonard sir.
Oh, great, huh? Dingraj, you are brilliant. So civil cases is very complex. I mean, cases relating to the property mostly constitute the civil cases. And those who are having the property for the maintenance of that property, they need some kind of knowledge. So property owning classes means they have the knowledge. So they are far better than the others because they are maintaining their property, right? So that's why, uh, property owning classes, they are also belonging to the educated classes. Now, Athenian democracy depended on three main institutions. So, first is the assembly of demos, that is, people, and second, council of 500 members, selected, right? And third, people's court. So there are three institutions because every democracy needs some institution. So there are three kinds of institution in the Athenian democracy. One, assembly of demos. Demos means people. Second, council of 50 members. 50 members council. And all these 500, I'm sorry, 500 members council, and all these 500 members will be selected. And the third, the people's court. These are the three institutions. And out of these three institutions, uh, except assembly of demos, council of 50 members and people's court, mostly they are called public offices, right? And there are two preconditions of this kind of democracy, as I mentioned earlier, that community must be small, economy must give citizens enough leisure to engage in the politics. It is needless to say, I don't know why I wrote it. There must be, huh? The point is that there must be a slave to do most of the work. The slave will do the manual work and the master should busy in the city state, in the affairs of the city state. So here one important thing uh, is to learn that all the intellectual and knowledgeous person, they should not do manual work, because the moment you do manual work, then there is a possibility your intelligence level may go down and down and down. So that's why Aristotle justified slavery, because for a city state needs citizens. So those, I mean, governance of a city state is the must. Otherwise, it will be a kind of anarchical system. And for the governance of a city state, there must be citizens. And Aristotle has defined who are those citizens. And the moment you become citizens and you are busy in the affairs of the city state, then there is the requirement of a slave, because to exist there are some manual works, and manual works should not be done by the citizens because their quality may deteriorate, and their quality is also needed for the city state. Hence, slave must be there. And who is a slave? A slave is a person who doesn't have any property and wisdom is not expected from him or her. This is a slave. Now the characteristic, write down the characteristic of the Athenian democracy. So I told you there are three main institutions. The features of direct democracy I told you. Then I told three main institutions of Athenian democracy. Now write down the characteristic of the Athenian democracy. So there are 5 characteristics of the Athenian democracy. So the first is the mass meeting. So what is this mass meeting? Now it is the periodical meeting to take the stock of the situation. Periodical meeting. So every weekend there will be a meeting, right? And what is the purpose of that meeting? The purpose of that meeting is to examine or is to evaluate the situation. What is the political situation? What is the economic situation of the city state? What is the crisis of society? What is the crisis of individual? So every let take it as a kind of example. Every weekend or every at the end of every month there is a mass meeting, right? And it is periodical. That means in each Sunday, the way I conduct the web talk in a very periodical manner. I mean, on each Sunday from 6 to 7:30, you will find a web talk. So I am doing it in a very periodical way, and that's how in Athenian democracy that mass meetings happens in a very periodical manner. Then the second, selection of full-time public officials by Athenians through either lottery or the election. So there will be full-time officials. We are the full-time officials. I mean, we are teachers and we are also officers, right? We are at the rank of an officer. And Dorothy has joined.
Yes, sir. He called me phone call.
Okay.
He can't.
He was confused. I will let you know. I mean, first we will communicate in the WhatsApp. Then we'll create the link and we'll come to class. So we are at the power of an officer, and we are the full-time officer. I mean, we start from an age, then we got retired in a definite age. So we are full-time, and the mode of selection of us is actually either it is done by the UPSC or OPSC or the university. But the Athenian democracy, the public offices, these officials in those offices, they are selected by the lottery system or the election. So every citizen at least once could get the scope of participation in the office of the state in a rotation method. So the important characteristic of Athenian democracy is that it's a small state, as I mentioned. So every citizen gets a chance to hold those public offices. I gave you the example that in a Gram Sabha, some are the Bhadarluk, but here in Athenian democracy, everyone can be Bhadarluk. Everyone can be Bhadarluk, and every Bhadarluk is in the position of a Bhadarluk for a small time, and then the rotation process will be there. So everyone will get a chance to become the Bhadarluk, right? I hope that you are getting. Are you getting me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, I'll continue. And the third characteristic of Athenian democracy is that every citizen at least once, could get the scope of participation in the office of the state on the rotation basis. I just told it. And the fourth features of Athenian democracy is that no hesitation to participate in the affairs of the state. I mean, people don't hesitate to participate in the official state. Instead, they were, waiting that when they will become the Bhadarlok and they will do the better justice. Right? So there is a kind of enthusiasm among people to participate in the affairs of the state. And today we are experiencing in modern democracy, some people don't vote because of their apathy. And in the Athenian democracy, apathy, that term was not there. Right? So all were very much interested in the affairs of the state. No special training to run the administration. Special training is needed for the military general. I mean, for military issues, special training is required. Otherwise, no training is required. I mean, you need not to be an expert in order to do administration or take the responsibility of the administration. Okay, you can take the example of present civil service. I mean, you can be from any discipline, but you can be a civil servant, and once you are selected on the basis of your merit, then there are different academy, and that will give you the training period, right? These are the probation period. In the probation period, they give the training to you, and after the training they give you the posting, and you are posted in different districts, different state, different blocks, and you do your responsibility. So these are features of the Athenian democracy. Now write down the principles of classical democracy. What is the principle? Now the chief political ideals of classical democracy are threefold. One, equality among people. People means citizens. People means citizens for Athenian democracy. Then there is liberty, there is respect for law and justice. And what is the mode of selection of the officials? As I mentioned, selection of the officials is based on the election or the lottery system. So all citizens are eligible for the post. Now students are joining. You must join in a definite time period. I mean time span. So all citizens are eligible for the post. Application of common rule by all over each. Tenure must not depend upon the possession of property qualification. Short tenure of office. Same person cannot hold the same office twice. Jury court will be chosen from all citizens. So what is the method of election? I mean, selection is based on election, but then what is the method of the election? The method of the election is that everyone is eligible to become a public official, and all must be guided by the common rule. Everyone must rule over everyone. Everyone must rule over everyone. The tenure of a person doesn't depend upon the possession of the property qualification. I mean, if you have a property, then you are citizen, and once you are a citizen, you are all equal. It doesn't mean that if I have more property, then I will hold office 1 or 2 years more than you. So if you have 1 acres of land, then you will hold the office for 5 years. If I am having 10 acres of land, then I will hold the office, let's say 20 years. So it is not like that. So tenure must not depend upon the position of the property qualification. And short tenure of the office. Why short tenure of the office? Because it will be on rotation basis. So I mentioned some of the officials are permanent and some of the officials are not permanent. I mean, where the technical education is required. For example, I told that the three main institutions are Assembly of Demos, councils of 500 members, then People's Court. I told that council and People's Court are the public office, and in those office, uh, some permanent, officials are required. Permanent members, permanent officials are required. But so far as the Assembly of Demo, Assembly of People is concerned, there, I think officials are required, but these officials must have this short-term duration because there is a rotation procedure. Uh, you know, if you will go after some time, I mean, let's take the example of Rajya Sabha, right? In Rajya Sabha, the same rotation is also there. I mean, you have to disappear so that others may, join. And the same person cannot hold the same office twice, right? So once you are holding one office, that means you should not hold that office for the next term, right? You should not, because only 30 years you can work. Within the 30 years, only one time will come where you can hold that office. So this is all about your classical democracy, or the Athenian democracy. Now come to what is the democracy in the medieval period. So I'm taking
Sir,
yes,
I have a question.
yeah.
Sir, Athenian democracy was possible only in small states. Then why the method of referendum was not applicable there in election?
Method of referendum, actually, it is a modern concept, and it is suitable uh, in the direct democracy of Switzerland, right? So
Yes,
all
sir.
these, referendum, all these, instruments of direct democracy, what is there in the Switzerland, that was not there, right? It was just like, like a Gram Sabha only. They are just initiating, democracy. So all these words were not there at that time. So, by the way, Ipsita, what do you mean by referendum?
Sir, when we ask people their opinion, I know, but
Okay, they were asking people's opinion. I mean, citizens' opinion. So those holding, in the assembly, those who were holding the official position, that was on the basis of rotation basis, as I mentioned, and they were listening to others also. So there is a kind of direct contact between these officials in the General Assembly and those who are sitting in front of that, officials. So there is a kind of conversation, but referendum is a very technical term. You just gave a very general understanding. But so far as this general understanding is concerned, that was there, but the term was not there. The term later, it subsequently it emerged with its all technicalities. Is that clear?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Great. Any other doubts? I'm happy that you are participating. Ipsita, can I see your face? Oh, great. Namaskar. Great. Okay. Is there any other doubt?
Sir,
Yeah, program.
sir, referendum means hello, sir.
Yes. Yes, Pragya.
Sir, referendum means is a direct voting by the electorate on a particular purpose, or issues, or Sir, this is correct or not?
Okay, no problem.
Okay, sir.
What is your question actually?
Sir, a little confusions regarding a referendum means in a book, sir, referendum means refers to
Refers to what?
the decisions or ideas. I'm not
That
clear
means
about.
your position. See, in a different class, I will tell you all these technical term relating to the direct democracy. There is recall, there is referendum, there is plebiscite, and what else, Mukesh? You told
Initiative, sir.
initiative,
can you say that
right?
referendum? The referendum means the mass opinion, something like that. Mass opinion.
Uh, Actually, the term will be more appropriate. The plebiscite actually. What is plebiscite? Okay, now you are bringing me to that. I mean, let me complete it. Then, one day we'll sit and we'll discuss on these, technical terms. Right. What is plebiscite, Mukesh? You check in your Google. I'm also checking.
Sir, referendum means I think when we need a direct suggestion from people one by one.
What is plebiscite?
It refers
Plebiscite
to
means the
Sir,
direct
people's
vote.
opinion.
Wait.
Sir,
Plebiscite
people's
means
opinion.
direct vote of all members of an electorate on an important public questions. So people will directly vote whether we should have universal uniform civil code or not, right? So here people, our representative will not vote. People will directly vote on that issue. So that is called plebiscite. A referendum means I mean it's there an occasion when all people of a country can vote on a particular political question. So it is also similar, plebiscite, referendum, but since two terms are there, so there is a kind of technical difference. But right now I may not be, I may not in a position to tell you. Let me do a small research on that, and one day we will sit and we will discuss about Switzerland, direct democracy in the Switzerland. On that context, I will make everything very clear. So if there is two terms, referendum and plebiscite, then there are two meanings, though there are some commonalities. There is some commonalities. On the Kashmir issue, whether Kashmir should be given to the Pakistan or not, Nehru, did something in the United Nations. So what Nehru did, had he given the words that we will do a plebiscite there, Mukesh? I mean, we will ask the Kashmiri people whether they want to stay with India or they want to stay with Pakistan or they want to stay independently. I think what I remember that Nehru, promised for a plebiscite in the Kashmir, right? Asking people directly that with whom you want to be, right? So I can remember that Nehru promised a plebiscite, not referendum, right? So that's why I told that plebiscite will be much more appropriate than the referendum. But in the Google, I saw that it is all about relating with the voting. So I will not get into that right now. You just hold on, and if you all will request me, because this is outside your syllabus, I can deal with it on the basis of your request only. If you request me, then I will tell you, or we will have a discussion on this technical term. I will teach Switzerland direct democracy. There all these instruments will come, and all these instruments have different purpose, different meaning, and different scope, right? So I hope that we let us not get into that. Okay, Pragya?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's come to democracy in the medieval period. But before I come, let me take 2 minutes gap. So you can take 2 minutes gap. 2 minutes. 2 minutes mean 2 minutes. It's not more than 2 minutes. Then again we will come. So let's have a cup of water or glass of water. Then we'll come, and we will continue for next half an hour. Okay, Mukesh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hold that. So I hope all you are there.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Okay, we'll continue.
Yes, sir.
Let's move. What happens to democracy? In Athens, in the Greek, the way democracy, had started in the medieval period. That start. It was. It did not take further move. It was expected that democracy had started in a very beautiful manner. Democracy has started in the classical period. Then democracy will get a boost in the medieval period, but nothing such happened, right? Let me read the last sentence. I will come to that. In Norton-Cell, democracy did not make much headway in this, medieval period. And why democracy did not, flourished? The right word would be flourish. Democracy did not flourish in the medieval period. Now, it's because the period was dominated by the feudalism. The period was dominated by the feudalism. Now, can you get the connection? In the classical period, having a land is the reason of having wisdom, is also the reason of having education knowledge. But in the medieval period, having a land means becoming a feudal person. Can you see the shift? The shift, can you locate? I will take you into the Mahabharata actually. Right. In the Mahabharata, when Raja Bharat, the king Bharat, he was ruling, and he was having a son who was not appropriate to become a king, and that's why the Raja declared that if there is any eligible candidate in his kingdom, he can make him as the king instead of making his own son king. Now look at the greatness of that tradition. And later on, when Dhritarashtra became the king, he initially was dreaming to be the king, as if becoming king was a kind of personal satisfaction for the Raja Dhritarashtra, and he was eagerly having interest how to make his son Duryodhana as the king. So at the time of Bharat, the king was guided by the common good, and at the time of Dhritarashtra, the king was guided by his personal or private interest. The king was guided by the private interest. And when I'm saying king, a king is a king because he is having a kingdom, because he is having a property. So the king Bharat used property for the common good. And the king Dhritarashtra, he used property for his vested interest. Now this is the difference between Bharat and Dhritarashtra. Both are the king. And the same difference is also there between classical period and medieval period. In the classical period, Manu was traditional than the Bharat, King Bharat was traditional than to Dhritarashtra. So here Bharat represents the classical period and Dhritarashtra represents the modern period, and both the king have their kingdom, have their own property resources. So it was realized in the medieval period, those who were having the property, they gradually lost the wisdom and they were starting controlled by the materialistic forces. They thought that if you are having matter, then you are powerful. And if you are powerful, then you should always concentrate on your power. Why to concentrate on others? Others are there, you can manipulate others. Others are there for the increase of your power. You are not there to serve those people. Those people can be manipulated towards the increase of your power. And this was all about the medieval period. Okay. So this period was dominated. So you got the link, Pragya?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now this period was dominated by feudalism. And what is feudalism? There are three major characteristics of feudalism. First, absence of the idea of sovereign power. Second, reversion to customs in the place of uniform system of laws. Third, dominance of hierarchy over imperial unity. So these are the three major characteristics of the feudalism. Absence of sovereign power. So what is a sovereign power? A power which is externally and internally free. But that sovereign power was not there because power was concentrated in the hands of few property owning classes, and they were guided by their own customs, conventions, rituals. Their only aim and goal was to maintain their superiority in their social setting. So they were not accepting the rules and regulation, and they were trying to purchase the state. Let me give you an example in the Hollywood, in the Bollywood movie you can find in the 90s movie. You know, there are Jamindar. They are actually the villains also, I mean, in the movie. And when the police try to intervene in their corruption, then they used to ask police, Haveli ko aa jana. Haveli ko aa jana. That means आपका तो बड़े बड़े ऑफिसर हवेली को आते हैं, आप भी आ जाइए, कुछ लेके चले जाइए, और ये बारंबार स्टेट हमारे सामने मत लाइए. Now there you can feel the spirit of feudalism and how feudalism was trying to incorporate state within its fold. So all these feudalistic persons, they were guided by, as I mentioned, by their own customs, rules, rituals. They were not accepting the state laws, and for them maintenance of hierarchy is the ultimate goal. So I have to keep my subordinate always subordinate to me, and I will always maintain superiority over my subordinate. So that was the feeling. Now this type of society could not be congenial to the growth of democracy. So democracy basically means here, democracy needs your thought. If you are guided by such kind of thought, then can democracy possible? No, democracy cannot be possible. The clerical resistance to the royal or imperial power imposed limitation upon the powers of the state. That means, what is the clerical resistance? Basically, clerical means the elite of every religions are clerical. In the European context, clerical power means power of the church, power of the fathers, power of the popes. They were showing a kind of resistance to the state. They were imposing limitation on the state. So state was not imposing limitation for the pope. Pope was imposing limitation for the state. Religion was much more powerful than the state. And when Machiavelli emerged, he separated religion from the politics, and he justified why state must prevail upon the religion. Religion should not prevail upon the state. State should manage the religion. Religion should not manage the state. But before Machiavelli, in the medieval period, the religion was managing the state. And that's why Sabine, he wrote in his book, The History of Political Philosophy, the Pope in 15th century established himself as the first of an absolute monarch, and the theory of papal absolutism became the archetype of the theory of monarchical absolutism. So state was there, but state was very weak. State was a puppet in the hand of the Pope. If at all it was there, it was papal supremacy. Papal means a regime that is governed by the Pope. What is a Pope? Anyone? Dorothy?
A supreme leader in Christianity.
Oh, great. Supreme leader. I mean, we Brahmins, we are the Pope in Hinduism, but there is a difference between Brahmins and the Pope. Pope were very much powerful, very much powerful. So in Knot and Cell, as I have mentioned in the beginning, democracy did not make much progress in this period. Instead, democracy was forgotten. Democracy was forgotten. So nobody wanted to thrive democracy, because at that time all these property owning classes, they have already become Dhritarashtra. They have already lost the king Bharat inside them. In the Greece or in the Athenian democracy, King Bharat was there in the mind and heart of property owning classes. But subsequently, King Dhritarashtra replaced King Bharat in their body, in their mind and spirit. And that's why, as long as Dhritarashtra is there in your mind, then you cannot do justice. To do justice, there must be a Bharat in your mind. As long as you become Duryodhan, you cannot give justice. When you become Yudhishthir, then only you can give justice. Your action depends on your thought. What you think, accordingly you will act. So this is all about democracy in the medieval period. Any doubt before I move to the modern time? Any doubt on democracy in the medieval period?
Three elements of feudalism.
Who is asking this? Three elements of feudalism. Pragya, can you utter three elements of feudalism?
One is absence of sovereign power.
Now, Pragya, are you there? Lingaraj, you just wait. I'm just cross-checking everyone. Pragya, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what are those three elements of feudalism?
Sir, absence of sovereign power.
Yes.
Then, sir, other two is forgotten.
Second
Sorry,
is the reversion to the customs in the place of uniform system of laws. Reversion jagare lekho, guided by custom in the place of uniform system of law. Then third, dominance of hierarchy over imperial unity. Dominance of hierarchy over imperial unity. These are the three characteristics of medieval period. And what is interesting, the way I connect the medieval period with Mahabharata, that is quite interesting. Bharat and Dhritarashtra both have the property, but their thinking pattern was something different. Bharat was thinking about the state, thinking about the common good, and Dhritarashtra was thinking about how he will become the king and how his son will become the king. So everyone will follow the order of his son. Now this is the difference. And in the medieval period, unfortunately, Dhritarashtra or Duryodhana emerged in the mind of landowning classes. So I hope I made sense to you.
Sir,
Yeah.
can we say that medieval democracy was trying to be conservative?
In fact, they are not democracy. I mean, conservative has its own form of democracy. I told you na. In the paternalistic conservatism, it's all about, you have to pay the price for your privilege, for the maintenance of your privilege. That means you are having a responsibility. The rich has the responsibility towards the poor, and poor should respect to the rich. You can call it, it's a kind of democracy. Gandhi also talked about this kind of thing in his concept of trusteeship, right? So conservative has their own understanding of democracy, but here it's not they are not conservative actually. They are corrupted. The whole medieval period, democracy did not flourish because of the corruption, corrupt mindset. Can you say, since Turoti is asking, and I am giving the example of Mahabharata, he may not, or she may not understand it, but others can understand. Can you say that Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, do you find any kind of democracy, any kind of justness with the personality like Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra? Anyone?
No, sir.
Mukesh?
Please ask again what you want.
Not what I
Any
want.
kind of?
I'm just posing you question. Now, can you find any kind of democracy or justness in the personalities like Dhritarashtra or Duryodhana? You got me? Okay, there is some network problem. Okay, let's come to the modern time, democracy in the modern time. Now, in this time, democracy was the outcome of the conflict between the king and the people. So, the emergence of Machiavelli, the starting of modern period, and the conflict between the religion and the politics, conflict between the king and the papal, the conflict between the king and the papal, right? From there modern time begin. Now with the growth of enlightenment, the common people began to question the authority, demand more and more political rights and privileges. Okay, there is another thing, very interesting thing, let me tell you. So the modernity started with the conflict between the religion and the politics, the conflict between the king and the papal, and at the end, after the emergence of the Machiavelli, the king prevailed upon the papal, papal got weakened, and king became powerful. But during that fighting, some of the vices of papal was incorporated in the king's personality. So when you are fighting with a negative force, so papal is a negative force, king is a positive force. And when a positive force fights with a negative force, there is possibility that some of the negative aspect of the negative force will be incorporated in the positive force, and that happens. And it has happened with the king. Some of the vices of the papal supremacy, it was incorporated in the king, and as a result, there is a conflict between the king and the people. There is a conflict between the ruler and the ruled. Now, with the growth of enlightenment, the common people began to question the authority and demand more and more political rights and privileges. Democracy as an ideal, principles and institution got a growth through, there are so many movements. These are very crucial so far as modernity is concerned. There are, three movements. So Glorious Revolution in England, then the French Revolution, then American Revolution. Now, tell me when that Glorious Revolution happened.
1688.
1688. 1688. When the French Revolution took place?
1789.
Oh, great, great. And when American Revolution took place?
1776.
Bas, good. 1776. I hope you people can get UGC net, right? And if my teacher would have asked, I would have not answered it, or I would have bluffed it. I'm very poor in that, remembering the dates. Okay, that's great. Then all these, three revolutions, out of the three revolution, enlightenment, happened in a very progressive manner, and common people, started. Once upon a time, common people were afraid of king or the ruler, but subsequently, out of these three movements, people started questioning the authority. Why? Now, the main principles of democracy, which emerged out of it, from all these three revolutions, the dominant concept of democracy emerged. And what are those dominant concept of democracy which actually strengthened people, and now people are in a position to pose question to the king or to the ruler. And what are those dominant concepts? Now, these are the concept of equality, concept of popular sovereignty, concept of liberty, concept of fraternity. Now, there is a spiritual aspect so far as the foundation of democracy is concerned. So all are these political concepts on which, people got the confidence, and now they are in a position to ask a question to the authority. Now, there is a spiritual aspect so far as the foundation of democracy is concerned. Now, what is this spiritual aspect and why people got the confidence? First, they got the confidence because of this, three revolutions, and because of the emergent concept out of that, three revolutions. Along with that, there is also a spiritual aspect of the foundation of democracy. Let me read the spiritual aspect. All men are equally the children of God, thereby equal in their needs and right. Each must count for one, and for no more than one. Each has something to give and must therefore be given his chance to contribute. It follows from this that government exists for persons, not for the other way around. The state is only there to give the individual their fullest opportunity of living good life. They, not the state, being the judge of what goodness is for them. And finally, authority cannot come from above or from outside, it is only, or its only source is the people themselves. Its only justification is its derivation from popular authority. Now this is a slogan of, I'm forgetting, out of these three revolution. Now this is this passage, I'm just forgetting, it is derived from one of these three revolutions. So what is the spiritual aspect of the democracy? I mean, they connected democracy with God. So God has created all individuals equally, and all are the children of the God, and hence there is a natural equality among people. All are, all have needs, all wants right, and each must be count one. I mean, my vote will be counted as one vote, and your vote will be counted as one vote. It's not that since I'm a professor, my vote will be counted, two, and your vote will be counted one. So God will not happy if such thing will be there. So basically, the frustration is because of the attitude of feudalistic people in the medieval period. So because of that frustration, democracy, it was more linked with the popular participation than linked with what fascist people, they said that the true democracy, or the real interest of the individual. So democracy more got attached with popular participation because of that frustration with the feudalistic people in the medieval period. So each must count for one, and for no more than one. Each has something to give, and must therefore be given its chance to contribute. So each, let me say you, in this class, okay, you all are unique, but you all are not same. Each is unique and special, and you should be given a chance to represent your uniqueness, right? It's just like that each has something to give and must therefore be given his chance to contribute. And it follows from that the government exists for persons, not for the other way around. So the state or government is there for the people. People are not there for the government. The state and government is there for the people. People are not there for the government. The state is only there to give individuals the fullest opportunity of living good life. They, not the state, being the judge what goodness is for them. I mean, the state will not judge what is good and what is bad for the individual. The individual decide what is good and bad for the individual. And the state must facilitate the condition where individual can develop his capacity in a fullest manner, right? And finally, authority cannot come from the above or from outside. Its only source is the people themselves. So authority is authority because of people, or people obey the authority, that's why the authority is authority. So authority basically means it's a legitimate power. It's a legitimate power means the people voluntarily obey it. Why people voluntarily obey the authority? Because people have given the consent. People have agreed to be abided by that authority. So authority is not from the above. Authority is not from outside. Authority is derived from the people themselves. Right. Now this is the spiritual aspect of the foundation of democracy, and that this process, as I mentioned, it has been derived from one of these, three revolutions, right? So that's how, democracy in the modern period, it thrived. It thrived. So in classical period, democracy beautifully started, and in the medieval period, it was beautifully declined, and in the modern period, democracy again newly emerged with these three kinds of, revolution. So in the next class, we will discuss on classical liberal theory of democracy, and let's see how it will move. So I hope that you got sense of democracy within this, three periods. So if any questions on, democracy in modern time, we can have discussion, then I will end here, lecture. Any questions? Are you all there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. When I ask, then you should, bluntly, respond to me. Okay. Any questions is there?
No, sir.
Okay, that's great. If you will not ask question, that means you are weakening your teacher, right? So you all have united to weaken your teachers, isn't it? That's not a good idea, Pragya. The teachers are teachers because of students. Actually, students makes a teacher as a teacher. I mean, I am appointed as a teacher, but whether I am a true teacher or not, it depends on you, whether you are putting critical questions to your teachers or not, right? So now let me end this class, but hold on, we will discuss something not in the recorded version. Hold on.